Hello and welcome to the Book Bunch. My name is Sam. It is so great to have you guys here for another fantasy recommendations video. This one, there's only a couple today. It's a bit of a shorter one just because it's only a couple of days since the last one and I can only read so much, but there's some goodies. So first we have Aivan, the One Truth, or at least I think that's how you pronounce it. I may need to be corrected in the comments below. But this has been sent to me by the lovely unicorn writer, also known as Kayla Green. She kindly sent this to me just for my honest review, and I was thrilled to have it sent to me. She also sent me some a beautiful little card and some bookmarks and some really cute artwork of her characters, which I thought was really cool as well. And she signed it for me, which was very, very nice of her. And yes, so what is this about? This is a little novella, and we follow these two characters, Rune and Rolf, and they are growing up in a world where a one true God doesn't exist or it has become myth, and instead they follow a whole host of these gods that they think will be able to help them. Like there's a river god and a sun god and stuff like that, and they have a lot of traditions and things. Like there's very specific ceremonies and stuff that they have to do, and human sacrifice and all sorts of crazy stuff. And it is very reminiscent of Old Testament times. There is a lot of biblical influence in this, quite heavily, in regards to she's taken the ideas of some of the biblical stories and then like completely changed them into something else, which is all good. Like they were fun to read about, like the same kind of idea but in a fictional setting with different characters and possibly a different outcome in the end. But yeah, like there's some references to like Daniel's friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they go into the fire and they don't get burnt up. And there's like references to when they had the two altars, and they called down like each of their gods to try and set the fires, and only gods one actually worked and the false gods one didn't, and different things like that in there. It was quite cool. I do feel like my only real issue with it was the story was a bit too fast paced, probably because it was a novella and she was trying to fit in as much as she could. And I do think it was just slightly too fast paced. I did give it a 3.5 overall. It is very YA, and I just feel like sometimes with YA, I just feel like I'm a little bit too old for, maybe it's the writing style or something about it. That's why I tend to stick to adult fantasy. I don't know, YA is a bit of a weird one for me, but if you are YA age, I definitely think, like if you're like 18 or whatever, this would be a really good novella for you to pick up, especially if you like biblical inspired stories and stuff like that. It was really good. But yeah, we follow these two characters as they're living in this world, and God basically intervenes and taps on their shoulder and is like talking to them and being like, hey, don't listen to this. Like, this isn't real. Like, come find me, kind of thing. Seek me and do what I say. And like, we will bring truth to this nation, kind of thing. And it was really cool seeing how she imagined God interacting with people, and I do think there's a lot of like fact in there as well, which was quite cool. But yeah, it was an enjoyable story, very quick read. For this copy is only like just over 100 pages. But yeah, definitely recommend if you're looking for a quick fantasy read and you like the biblical kind of stuff. And then finally, for this video, I'm going to talk about Resistance by J.L. Knight. I picked this one up quite a while ago because I saw Celestia, like maybe start of last year, do a review on it, or just mention it in passing, because I believe she's read the whole series now. And I thought it sounded really, really good. So I added it to my list and I bought it probably almost a year ago. But then I didn't actually pick it up and read it. And I was kind of putting it off because it is a little bit chunkier. And I just was like, oh, that's going to take a lot of my mental focus and energy. But I'm glad I took the plunge and I regret not taking it sooner because this was a really good book. Like, I would probably give it 5 out of 5 stars, maybe 4.5 out of 5 stars. The only issue I had with it was that a couple of the conversations in here are a little bit janky or maybe abrupt or something. I don't know, something about them just didn't fit right. Like maybe, I don't know, they were a bit naive maybe. I'm not quite sure. But this was like her very first book and she's written like at least 10, I think, books in this series now, if you include all of the like ones set in the same universe and the novellas and everything. Like there's quite a few because I know there's 5 main books and then I found out the other day that there's a bunch of like novellas and stuff that she's written in the same world. So yeah, I'm definitely going to continue the series though. So what is Resistance about? This is a story that's main focus is about bringing light to persecution. And I had never read a book like this before, especially in a fantasy setting, and it was so good. And I'm so glad that I did read it. But it's very reminiscent of old school fantasy in regards to the setting and all of that kind of thing. It's very much so, there's knights and like old school gods, and there's a lot of like rulers trying to conquer stuff, and I don't know how to explain it, but it's probably meant to be set kind of medieval time sort of thing. Like everyone just like gets places by a horse or horse and carriage or walking, that kind of stuff. And yeah, so we follow a couple of different characters throughout this. There is a few perspectives. So we follow one boy named Jace and then his like adoptive dad named Raylan, and we kind of get introduced to them pretty early on. And basically what happens is Jace is what's called a half Ryrick, which is like a Ryrick is like this other species or subspecies of human kind of thing. Um, and they're known for being like vicious killers, and like humans have a very strong aversion to them because of this, because many people have been killed from the Ryricks. And he is a half Ryrick, and no one knows how that's even possible because like Ryricks like in the past have only ever like straight up killed women. Like they've never kept them long enough to be able to have a kid. And yeah, so they don't know where Jace really came from. They just know that he was half Ryrick. And Rylan stumbles, I think that's how you say his name, Rylan, something like that. He stumbles upon Jace being beaten up because he is like a slave at the time, and he is being whipped and stuff by his master. And Raylan like can't handle seeing that happen, so he buys Jace and then sets Jace free. And then Jace kind of becomes his son over the next few years. And they both, well, Rylan kind of shares his faith with Jace, and they both end up believing in the one true God. And it's quite cool and it's quite well done, and I do like how they talk about faith in this book. I feel like it's that perfect amount of overt Christianity in a fantasy book. And yeah, so that's them. But Jace is struggling because he isn't very good with human interactions because humans are very hostile towards him being what he is, and also the fact that they kind of tell him he's an animal and a monster and that he doesn't have a soul. and that obviously is very upsetting for Jace, and he's carrying around a lot of wounds, and he struggles with his faith because he doesn't, like, sometimes he gives into those evil thoughts and believes that he doesn't have a soul, and so that, like, the god's not looking after him. And Ryland's whole thing is like trying to keep Jace in the faith and like telling him that no, like, you are worthy, you do have a soul, don't listen to these people, they just have past prejudice. And then there's another set of people that we follow called I'm gonna forget the name now, Kyron and Caden, and they are a set of twins, and they have grown up believing in the multiple gods, and they are currently training in like this special program to end up as elite military for the emperor, who is quite evil and corrupt. And he basically takes any kid that is special, like has special abilities or is just very smart, or very skilled in some kind of way, and he takes them away from their families and he puts them in this like training school military thing and trains them up to like be his personal bodyguards and his elite like military people. And our like the two main people that we follow, the twins, one of them, the girl Kyrene, she has like severe anxiety, and I do like how Jail Knight writes about anxiety in this book and like panic attacks and all of that kind of stuff. It is like very real. And it was just interesting to me to see that in a book because it's not very common. And yeah, Kyrene's got this ability where she's got one of those memories where like she remembers absolutely everything. I don't know if it's photographic or if it's like more than that, because like she remembers everything she's ever seen, not just like written or visual stuff. Like it's any person she's ever met, any scenario she's ever been a part of. Like she remembers every single memory basically, if that makes sense. And she can do this thing where she reads people, so she can like basically look into their soul and see if they're lying or if they're bad at heart or whatever. And she ends up getting plucked out of this military training a couple of years early because the emperor has summoned her to work for him and use her gifts to like tell if people are lying to the king and stuff like that. And normally that would be like a huge honor, but like while they were in this training group, so they'd originally believed in these false gods, and then when they were in this training group they met this man named Sam, who is a different race, but I can't remember what race he is, and he introduces them to the one true god. And they believe, but they have to keep it secret because anyone that believes in this world gets killed. Like the emperor has a vendetta, he's killing anyone that doesn't believe in his gods. And so she has to try and keep her faith a secret. And yeah, her life's like under threat and everything's kind of falling apart, and I can't really tell you more than that just because I don't want to give away the rest of the book, but a lot of stuff happens, and all of the characters' perspectives I found that were really good. I really did enjoy it. I definitely preferred this kind of perspective in a story where I don't know if it's true third person or not, but I hate the version, and this has become something that I didn't realize was a problem for me. I automatically cannot give a book 5 stars if they use the words I. It like something inside me is like ugh. It's not good. And I don't know if that's just because I can't then put myself in their perspective because I feel like they're talking to me more than like, even though you're kind of reading into their conscience, for some reason when I read that, my brain can't then go, oh, you're that character, and it kind of pulls me away from the story a little bit. Like, I'll read it and I can still give them a relatively high rating if they're still well done, but it's my least favorite genre perspective of writing. And yeah, I'm glad that Resistance didn't have that. It had that perspective where it's like you're focused on like one character and kind of what that character is experiencing, but you're not like in their head and they're not talking to you going, oh, I did this and I did that and I feel this way. But you still like know how they think and feel. I hope that makes sense. I can't remember what that perspective's called because I don't know if it's actually third person or if it's one of the other ones like omniscient or whatever. But yes, definitely recommend Resistance if you like old school fantasy, especially with like a Christian message throughout. It was one of the better ones I've read, and I am obsessed with the series now, and I'm definitely going to pick up the other ones. But that's kind of all for this week of fantasy for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I am probably going to do some Anne of Green Gables next week, and then after that I'm going to plunge into some sci-fi for a little bit, just because I haven't read a sci-fi in a little while, and I have a couple that I do actually want to read and I'm excited to read. So I'll do that over the next couple of weeks, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you have a good one. Bye!